Hi, everyone. As you can see, I'm not Mikko Rekola. Unfortunately, he's unwell, so I'll be stepping in for him. My name is Anne Moulet. I'm the customer success lead at Woolman. And today we are joined by our lovely friends of Tapcart. And Neal is going to run us through this webinar. Neal?
Thanks so much, Anne. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Really excited to have a conversation today and talk a little bit about the future of mobile and what that means for brands, particularly in Europe. Would love to also open up the room to questions as they come in. I encourage you to drop into the chat with any questions you have. This is meant to be more of a conversation. So with that said, thank you all for having me. Really excited to be here. Can you see my screen, Anne? Right.
All good now. Can see it.
All right. So when we think about, why we're having this conversation today, we think about what it means for a brand to be truly mobile first, how that definition has evolved over the course of time, and then more importantly, what are brands doing right now to use mobile as a true retention mechanism for that brand, right? Now, high level, as we kind of go through today's discussion, again, it's meant to be more fluid, but the goal is to really understand, okay, why are we having this mobile conversation in the first place? Then how does an app specifically fit into the puzzle as one of those pieces that helps you with that strategy? Then we're going to be diving into the data, looking at, what it is about an app that, solves particular parts of the funnel, solves various parts of the retention strategy and increases LTV. And then for the back half of the discussion, we're going to talk about like what it takes to actually build one, what is the lift required. So with that said, as we get started, just a high level of the perspective that we're coming from. My name's Neal. I'm a team lead over here at Tapcart. We are the largest provider for mobile apps for brands on Shopify. We have about 2,800 brands on our platform that have leveraged an app as a part of the retention strategy. And so when you think about where we're coming in from that perspective, we have this incredible bird's eye view of what works and what doesn't work, right? It's also worth noting Shopify is an investor in Tapcart, sits on our board of directors. So we have an incredibly close relationship with Shopify and particularly what they're doing to serve Shopify Plus brands, right? When we think about that bird's eye view that I mentioned, again, we cover all different parts of the D2C spectrum. So when you think about the data set that we're operating against, technically, when we're talking about mobile, anybody can devise a mobile strategy. The question is like, who can help you leverage the data and understanding what works and what doesn't work? And that's where when you think about, choosing a partner for that mobile strategy, it's worth noting like, who is that partner that has the experience, but then also the data set to help you in those ongoing learnings over the course of time, right?
Neal, can I jump in on that slide? Actually, I think it's really interesting because we see a lot of really, really well-known brands here. Why do they choose to invest in apps? Do you have any core advantage we can go through quickly? And how they can also entice customers to really go onto their app and really use them?
Great question, right? When you think about why an app has been chosen by these brands as one of those sales channels, retention is one of the hardest challenges to solve, right? We think about a brand, they bring their customer into the funnel, and bringing that customer back in repeated fashion, more frequent fashion, has become so challenging over the course of time. So when you think about these brands, their goal is to say, how can I meet my customer where they are, right? How do I give another touch point? How do I give a differentiated experience that they can't get anywhere else? And that's where they have chosen to launch an app as a part of that strategy. When you look at most of these brands, the app is consisting somewhere between 10 to 25% of the total brand revenues on the e-commerce side for these brands, right? So it makes up a fairly substantial portion. And really where that comes down to, Anne, is understanding, okay, how do I get my loyal customer into a channel that is designed to convert, designed to retain, and bring that customer back more frequently than they would have in any other channel, right? And again, so I think that's the biggest why behind why these brands have added an app as a part of their strategy.
Great. Well, thank you for your answer. I'll let you.
Sure. When we think about you know, the concept of retention and where mobile experience comes into, playing that role. It's understanding first and foremost where your customers are. For the most part, we already know that, the vast majority of a brand's traffic is coming on mobile. Everyone's spending all day on their devices. So now the question is, if we as an individual, or I as a person, am spending my entire life on an app. I wake up to an alarm clock. That is an app. I check my Slack with with my coworkers on an app. I hail my ride on Uber on an app. I order my food via DoorDash or Uber on an app. I book appointments on my calendar through an app. So why is it that for our most loyal and coveted audience, why are we forcing them to go to web only, right, in order for us to transact with them? And so, that's been a historically difficult kind of conundrum that brands have been trying to solve for.
Yeah, and can you go a bit further into the split at the moment that we have between website mobile websites, apologies, and apps? Because right now we see that there is 79% of the traffic coming from mobile device, but how much of that traffic comes from apps actually?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now, that's actually a very tiny percentage, right? So when you think of a brand's web traffic, right, we're talking about 80 to 85%. And again, it's only the brands that are going to see a percentage of that come from an app once they have one, right? But typically, before having a conversation about launching an app, we're seeing 79, 80, 82%, sometimes higher, depending on the region, of web traffic coming on mobile. And as we know, one of the hardest things to do is sell on web, right? Selling on web is notoriously difficult, right? Think about what we're doing as a brand on Shopify that is trying to get that customer to buy. On average, if you think about it, when you go to a website, you find an item that you're intrigued by as a customer, it's taking 6, 9, 12, sometimes more clicks to ultimately check out. That's a lot of actions you're asking the customer to engage in.
Yeah.
And then the other part of it is when you think of a mobile website, we have some beautiful mobile websites out there, but the only limiting factor is the fact that it is a website that's designed to shrink to a device, which again comes with its own limitations, right? All of these things, if you look at it, leads to higher abandoned carts. When you think about like a data point here, if any brand were to take a look at their abandoned cart rate on mobile, you're looking at abandoned carts north of 70% on average, right? That's a huge number, right?
That's actually humongous. But then, do you have any best practice for a robust mobile strategy? Because your point is so important here.
Exactly. Like, think about this. It's really tough to completely solve the abandoned cart issue for like that new customer, for instance, right? But for that returning customer, that can be solved simply by giving them an experience that will reduce those friction points. We'll give them a mobile UI, UX. And that's where we guide into the app and how it solves this, right? So when you think about an app, you think of eliminating some of the challenges that'll exist on mobile web, right? Number one is loading times, right? Loading times, as we know, a lot of studies have been done that for every fraction of a second increase in loading time is a inverse correlation to conversion rates. Conversion rates continue to drop as those load times increase. Well, think about it. We are doing all kinds of CRO to a brand's website to improve site speed, but at the end of the day, we are reliant on the speed of that end user's browser, right? And browser speeds are limiting in and of themselves. So what happens when you build a customer experience channel that lives on the device, built for the device, not built for a browser? You're essentially able to eliminate those load times and then seamlessly build an experience that's designed for the device, not designed to fit into a device, right? And so the other aspect is, again, removing those clicks to the checkout. So what I shared on the previous slide of, the number of clicks to the checkout, the number of actions a user has to take to make that purchase, that leads to a high abandoned cart. Well, what happens when you remove that friction point altogether, bringing those clicks to checkout to 1, 2, or maybe 3, right? We send those conversion rates straight up. So speaking to your question, Anne, is that like, how does an app specifically solve that for that web conundrum. It won't solve it for all of your customers, but you can definitely solve it for your most loyal ones, right? The ones that want to download that app as a channel and have it on their device. Right?
Yeah, and you just touched upon the question I was going to raise is how do you ensure, or at least try to ensure, that the clients and the users are going to download the app and use it on repeat? Is it linked to the content? How do you work with that?
That's an amazing question, right? There has to be a why, right? There has to be a reason for that user to want to download that app.
Okay.
First, think about who that user is. They're probably a loyal customer. They're probably not at the top of the funnel. They are probably someone that has either, they're on an SMS list, they're on an email list, or they're an existing customer of some kind. They're lower in that funnel. So when they download that app, they need to get some kind of experience that they can't get anywhere else. Some brands view that as exclusive, discounts and promotions in the app that user can't get anywhere else. Other brands are leveraging it for building a community of their VIP users. So customers that come in can feel a sense of community and build conversation around that brand, right? Others are looking for early access to products and collections. And brands are leveraging an app to drive early access or even exclusive access to those products and collections inside the app to get that customer into that powerful funnel, right? So we know from a brand why we want that customer in the app. That customer is simply just going to purchase more over the course of time. But equally as important is putting yourself in the customer's shoes as to why you would want to download that app in the first place, right? Yeah. Absolutely.
Definitely have a customer-centric approach.
Yeah. So when you think about retention and the largest why behind an app, it really comes down to understanding like the retention flywheel, right? The retention flywheel, it's kind of divided into multiple components. We have like retention stack and tools that are integrated into the site. Think of loyalty programs, think of subscriptions that are weaved into the site to develop retention. Those are like retention tools. Then you have retention experiences, right? Experiences that are designed to retain. So some brands may use a Facebook group to retain that community type of sense. A mobile app fits into that category, right? And then there's the retention marketing messaging mechanisms. And so when you typically ask for what a brand is doing, they're typically saying, oh, we do email and SMS to retarget our audience, right? And push notifications from an app would be that third aspect, which most brands are probably not leveraging yet as a part of that third prong in the messaging mechanism, right? But the reality is it's become incredibly difficult to really maximize retention strategy. Things have changed to make customer acquisition costs harder than they ever have been. So when you think of retention has become more critical than ever. Yeah. If that customer acquisition cost is so much higher now, once that customer comes into that funnel, profitability is probably not coming with that customer on that first purchase. It's the retention mechanism that is driving that profitability over time.
Then how does an app actually like help strengthen that retention? I think we've clearly established here that retention has changed shape so many times and has so many forms right now, but it's so key also due to the cost of acquisition being so high. How do we leverage the app to really create a strong retention strategy?
That's a great question, right? It's been kind of like a continually evolving landscape. So if you look at iOS 14, we already know what that did to change customer acquisition costs and how we're kind of in this new normal for customer acquisition. Well, then that at post iOS 14, when brands got that wake up call, that's where the concept of the owned channel became much more important than before, right? Owned channel is you own your email list, you own your SMS subscriber list, you own your push notification subscribers or your mobile app users, right? Those are owned channels. And so that became really important. Well, then what happened with iOS 15? iOS 15 hit email privacy. So one of those, you notice that email performance dropped almost overnight from iOS 15, right? So one of the owned channels got hit there. Then iOS 16 came and impacted SMS marketing performance, right? So the second owned channel is getting hit there. And then now you have the iOS 17 that's being deployed where it's impacting the ability for a brand to be able to track their campaigns on Google, Facebook, and whatnot through the link tracking limitations, right? All of these things have made it so incredibly hard to devise retention. So the question is, where does an app fall in, and how is an app essentially absolved or protected from all of these iOS changes. It simply comes from living in Apple's world, right? Living in Apple's world means living on the device, living in the App Store. And so by a brand living here on that user's device, they're capitalizing on the most valuable piece of real estate that a brand could ever own, the device home screen itself. So, until this point, a brand has probably been living in a browser, been living in an email inbox, living in a text message thread, WhatsApp. But now, when you think about an app, it's living on that device home screen. A brand is able to capitalize on two types of biases that exist in the customer's mind at that point. First bias is the conscious bias. They're actively thinking about shopping. They're actively thinking about that brand or the brand's content. And now they have the easiest possible way to immerse themselves in that brand experience directly from their home screen, right? That's the obvious, more conscious bias. The much more powerful one that drives retention is the subconscious bias. In other words, the user's not thinking about that brand at that moment. They're not thinking about shopping, but they are staring at their mobile device for 6 hours every day, scrolling left and right across that brand's icon all day long. And that's what's going to prompt so many more clicks into the brand than any other channel could possibly achieve.
Yeah. And we talked about, obviously, iOS. What about Android? Because obviously, I think most of the devices are on Android. How essential is it to develop those two streams?
Absolutely. It's essential to have both ecosystems in full flex. So when you think about Tapcart specifically, the brand only has to manage one app, which is deploying that app to both Android and iOS. And again, the priority you put on each one of them, it will vary per brand. It'll vary per region, right? Android is heavy in Europe, whereas iOS is heavy in the US, right? So at the end of the day, it's critical to actually just meet their customers where they are on their device of preference. And you have the ability to do that in a fraction of the cost of time it traditionally would take. It's very turnkey to be able to manage those both ecosystems in real time.
Yeah, makes sense.
Now, when a brand has now earned that piece of real estate on the device home screen, again, now the question is, how does the brand make the most of that real estate, right? What good is a valuable empty lot on the beach if you don't build a beautiful house on it? And that's what push notifications are. Push notifications allow you to build that house, communicate to your users directly on their device home screen where there's no inbox in play. Take a look at what a push notification could potentially look like. Large, taking up over half that home screen. In this case, scrolling through different products in a Shopify collection in animated fashion. So whether it's content you want to drop here, a video, an animation you want to drop directly on that home screen, this is a scenario where like the open rates are absolutely huge. You cannot avoid seeing a push notification because it's landing on the device home screen, right? So it's equivalent to SMS in terms of its open rates, right?
And in terms of how do we get people to enable those push notifications? Because I think that's, again, where the intention is so needed from the customer. How do you incentivize them?
Absolutely, right? There has to be a why behind notifications. It's worth taking a step back and understanding, okay, if a customer is taking that step to download the app, that's an active conscious step saying, I want a deeper brand experience. So you're going to see a very high opt-in rate on those push notifications, right? Here at Tapcart, our data shows that 81% is the opt-in rate on push notifications. When you download a brand's app, right there at the beginning, there's a one button click to be able to opt into notifications, and it's there where the brand really needs to convey to the customer why it's really important to opt into those notifications. Hey, get early access to that product or collection. Here's exclusive discounts for app users only. Anything that the brand can extend in value as to the why behind opting in is what's going to get that opt-in rate to be high, right? But at the end of the day, the other much more powerful part, it's look at what most brands are doing right now. Like they're using Klaviyo, for instance, to automate their email flows and even potentially SMS or with their SMS provider, right? Or other, CDP type of platforms. Well, we would integrate as well with those platforms as well to be able to allow users to, receive different push notifications depending on who they are, right? So it's not about a one-to-many approach. I think when we talk about retention, we talk about true personalization at scale. How can you become more personalized in the way you communicate with that audience is going to be the largest aspect of that success in push notification strategy, right? So as we pivot over to the data, right? Let's look under the hood of what we can expect in terms of lift, right?
What is one of the outcomes of that brands can anticipate with the usage of a typical app versus one with Tapcart, for example? Is there any key metrics you can share with us? Any rough estimates? That would be really great.
Absolutely, yeah. There's like 4 core metrics that we watch in terms of like what the value and lift that a brand will bring or an app will bring to a brand. First is the lift in session frequency, right? So if any brand were to take a look at their web sessions right now, and compare that to their web users, you're probably seeing that your sessions per user is probably right around 1.2. I'm willing to bet that's right around 1.2 sessions per user for almost any brand here, right? When you think about an app, once that user downloads the app and you're living on their device home screen, the sessions per user is going to be magnified by a multiple of 3x, if not 4, 5, or 6x, simply as a function of living on the device home screen and weaving push notifications into the mix, right?
Right.
So number 2, now you have more frequent sessions. Those sessions are now going to convert at higher conversion rates as well. Why? We're removing those major friction points. Number of clicks to the checkout, loading times, more optimized UI UX on mobile. And then now you think about, okay, why is it that I go to Amazon and I end up adding so many extra items to the cart that I didn't initially attend when I clicked into Amazon? That's the beauty of an app. It allows you to do that. The UI UX is such a great experience that the users end up adding more items to the cart over the course of their purchase to the tune of 22% higher AOVs that same user audience would have done on web, right? This all in sum is a cumulative effect. These 3 metrics that I just shared essentially creates an unlock of about a 240% lift in customer lifetime value. So if you were to take a look at a cohort of customers, let's say a cohort of 100 of your top customers, see what they spent with the brand previously, then see what those same 100 customers spent once they downloaded the app, you're going to see a 240% increase in what they've spent over the course of that time period, right?
Sorry to interrupt. And how do you integrate also like loyalty programs that brands may have already? Because obviously it's a huge investment, right? So they may not want to sacrifice that, but they would want to integrate it to the app and tap into that customer lifetime value. So how does that work with Tapcart?
Absolutely, right? There's so many tools out there that are focused on increasing customer lifetime value, whether it's subscriptions, whether it's loyalty programs, membership programs, right? And all of these tools can also be pulled into your app. We in turnkey fashion, we are integrated with all of the largest loyalty providers, subscription providers, and whatnot. So the goal is to be able to take all of the tech stack that you're already leveraging on the website that's working for you on the retention front, and then also bring that into the app experience, right? And then from there, build and make it a more differentiated experience as well. Right?
Great. Super clear.
When you think about what we would typically do with the brand, right? And looking at how we would potentially model it out, we would collect, the brand's kind of data on, what their traffic looks like, what does their email list look like, what does their SMS subscriber look like, to get a sense for how we expect the app to perform. And so when you think about it, like we'll model out an expected number of downloads. And typically you'll find that most of those downloads are going to come from, customers that are already lower in your funnel, your email subscribers, your SMS subscribers. And so from there, we know that, okay, if we have, let's say, hypothetically 30,000 downloads that take place in that first year, now we know that sessions per user is going to be so much higher than the users were previously doing on web. So we would then have a forecast of what those expected sessions to be coming from those 30,000 downloads, right? So the real question is like, okay, well, how does this translate to revenue, dollars and cents, pounds and cents? Is kind of that ROI analysis, right? And expecting that in modeling out that performance.
Yeah, I see here that you're mentioning incremental sales, and maybe we can go over a bit on the concept of incrementality, just so everyone is clear.
I love that. Yeah, let's do that. So You're absolutely right, Anne. Like when it's not just about sales that are taking place in the app, it's understanding what is the incremental sales lift that we can bring to a brand by launching the app as part of the strategy, right? So when you look over here on the left-hand side, we would take that brand's, existing web data, right? Their sessions, users, sessions per user, conversion rates, and then their, AOVs, and understand, okay, if they have, monthly revenue, let's say $9 million, you know, comparing that to the number of web sessions, we know that the revenue per session is going to be $5.79, right? So on the flip side, when you look at the app side of the equation, we have the session traffic, we have the user traffic, and then we apply two additional assumptions to to the revenue side of the equation. First is the boost to the conversion rate, as I mentioned to you on the previous slide, minimum 40% boost to conversion rate, if not much higher, right? And then number two is the boost to the average order values, right? Even though we would typically say, 15, 20% boost to average order values, we prefer to be conservative here when we model out for a brand and just say 10%, right? So with all of this in sum, we know that we're going to be generating $1.1 million in monthly revenue inside the app. And so when you think about the actual comparing that to the number of app sessions, we now know we're generating $8.92 in revenue from each individual app session, right? In other words, each app session is now $3 more valuable than a session on the website. So the real big question here, and again, to what you mentioned, and incrementality. So this is the total sales figure, but isn't there a world where some of this would have happened on the website anyway? Or more importantly, is there a world where a customer finds the brand's mobile app, falls in love with the mobile app, chooses to stay on the mobile app, doesn't go back to the website because they love the app so much? In other words, creating a little bit of cannibalization from the website. The answer is yes, that's going to happen with a small percentage of your audience, but that's a very good thing because now once that user downloads the app, they're going to be visiting 3, 4, 5 times the frequency. Those sessions are converting at higher conversion rates, at higher AOVs. So the real question is not what total revenue is, but what is the incremental revenue? And so that's where you would see that out of this $1.1 million in monthly sales in the app, 411,000 of it was that incremental revenue that came, essentially the unlock in LTV that would not have happened had it not been for the app.
Yeah. And just because we're talking about, sales performance, but obviously launching those apps have a cost. Like, maybe we can discuss how costly is it? Like, is it something that can be rolled out quite quickly? I think help everyone to understand that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So when you think about, comparing it from a cost perspective and a launch and management performance perspective to the other kind of retention marketing channels like email and SMS, I think it takes push notifications are going to take the best of both worlds here, where essentially they are, email we love because it's typically a high ROI channel because of the, minimal cost of essentially that brand's, Klaviyo account, right? On the flip side, brands love doing SMS because it's amazing deliverability. 95% of people are going to see that message versus 25% of people are going to open that email, right? And push notifications, I think, takes the best of both worlds, where it has they're free and unlimited, right? But they have the same deliverability and open rates of SMS, right? So you actually find two things. Number one, brands that are leveraging SMS heavy are able to scale back on their budget on SMS because they got their users opted into free push. And number two, particularly for brands in Europe, SMS is costly. It's really expensive. So, and much more expensive than it is here in the United States. So brands are loving push, the fact that they don't have to endure those, really huge costs associated with SMS. But then when you think about like launching the app, there's going to be a cost associated with that. Well, from our perspective, we kind of take a different approach altogether, right? Typically, when you think of launching an app, you think of hiring a custom developer. You think of many months of development. You think of huge, large retainers in cost, 6 figures in budget. And we took that model and essentially turned it upside down. We will build, design, get that brand's app up and live without any upfront costs whatsoever. In other words, our goal is to help a brand prove the channel as they go. And so for this reason, we simply structured in a model where we can build and design, get that app live in 2 weeks, right? Brands typically are so scared about launching an app as a channel because they believe it's a huge lift channel. It takes a lot of bandwidth and resources on their team. And the reality is we can launch a brand's app in under 2 weeks, right? That is
That's
drastically different than custom development.
that's an amazing figure. How does that work when a brand wants more customization or has more intricate requirements?
Great question, right? So first off, most of the brands on our platform, they can launch almost their entire mobile app using our no-code framework and platform that we provide them. And again, we do it in a true white glove service. Brand does not have to lift much resource from their end because they have the disposal of our designers and our team to do all of that work for them, right? But then when you think of brands on Shopify Plus, they've done an incredible amount of custom development to their website, to their flows, to their experiences. And now they want to be able to pull those into the app too. And that's the beauty of Tapcart, is that we have the no-code framework, but then we also have dev tools. Dev tools essentially means that we are making our SDK and developer experience available to any agency or any brand for them to do custom development on top of their app with Tapcart. So instead of having to build an app that has those custom requirements from the ground up, you're able to build 95% of your app in a couple of weeks, and then use your own developer resources in a democratized fashion to custom develop on top of it using our dev tools framework.
Great, that's amazing, to be honest. Definitely amazing. One thing I would like to know also is how do we gear towards different markets, right? Like Europe being such a fragmented market with different languages, regulations, even though we are all under GDPR. How do you adapt per market, and how do you kind of enable this cross-border approach that may be like more popular still in North America?
Absolutely, right? Great questions. First, GDPR compliance is paramount, right? And Apple takes that privacy more seriously than virtually any platform on the planet. We abide by all GDPR compliance rules and regulations as well. When you think about cross-border commerce or multiple languages within a region, like what you experience in Europe, that's a scenario where you can leverage tools like Shopify Markets or Global E for that cross-border commerce capability. Some brands will have multiple storefronts for different regions. Other brands have a unified storefront for multiple regions. And however that brand has that structured, we have the tools that allow you to launch the app, that allow you to sell cross-border, again, in turnkey fashion, leveraging the stack that you're already leveraging on Shopify Plus, right? So again, cross-border commerce is a huge thing, and it's very complex when it comes to the European climate. And that's a scenario where, again, you will be able to, in turnkey fashion, essentially allow that same functionality that you're powering on your website to also be leveraged in the app for cross-border needs as well.
Great. And is there any other consideration for European merchants to be aware of?
I think it's the European brands often might have challenges with retention because they find SMS to be cost prohibitive, right? So you'll notice a lot of brands are doing SMS, but they're probably underutilizing SMS simply because the cost to send, right? Particularly if they're looking to penetrate other markets around the globe. So that's a scenario where this is where European brands, UK is our third largest market. Simply because of the free push notification factor that allows you to send those notifications with same deliverability, if not better performance than SMS, except without the cost associated with SMS.
Great. Super helpful.
With that said, I really enjoyed our conversation today. When it comes to any questions, please feel free to share them either during the call or after the call, and we'd be happy to respond accordingly to each of those questions as well.
Well, I think also I think we can move forward if there is no further questions. I think the last thing to say is obviously Woolman is going to be part of few events that are right now on the screen. If you want to reach out to us. Same, I think, with our friends of Tapcart, obviously. If you have questions regarding the webinar or upcoming events, feel free to reach out to us, and hopefully meet you soon, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.